Yo, first of all, this 30-second drop that we just did, that beat was slapping.
I felt like a major beat drop at the end of it. Like I was like, this is smoke was gonna play.
We're going to do this more often.
Exactly, just for vibe music. Welcome.
Yes. Welcome to another episode of the Divine Masculine Activated. As always, we are your host. I am Cortni Grange.
I am JD Weatherspoon.
We are here, of course, as always, to discuss the principles, the order, and the structure, to help you activate your masculine energy without sacrificing your feminine energy. In that space, we often talk about leadership, principles, belief.
And by often, like you mean once or twice per episode?
Oh, I was going to go even further than that. I mean, like
conservative,
11 times per episode.
Indeed.
Oh man, but now today is especially centered around leadership. More specifically, what is leading you? Mm-hmm. And we were thinking through this topic, because the construct of leadership, not just personally, but professionally, in the community, and then what we see in the larger views of our country right now is taking really, really weird and eclectic shapes, right?
And why do you think that could be?
Because people don't know what's leading them.
Aha. Not saying that like that's the only reason, but I digress. So we really wanted to identify that piece, largely inspired by a lot of like conversations offline where you really have to dissect, like at the center of your decisions, like its cause and effect. What is your cause? Is it good? Is it bad? Is that even relevant? The point is, we're back to that static that we discussed in our first episode, where there is a clash of frequencies. Because if you don't know what's leading you, you can either go along with everything that you're surrounded by, or you could react in opposition to everything that you see. Either or.
Yeah. You get a very staticky, hard to understand aspect of leadership, because in that sense of it, right, like you're either a sheep or you're a wolf, but like where are the shepherds? You know what I'm saying? Sheeps are going to do what sheeps are going to do.
Exactly.
Or where's the sheepdog, so to speak? Because even the sheepdog, like, yeah, even more so, like if we got the sheep and we have the wolves, where are the sheepdogs? Because those are the ones being led by the shepherd, right?
And they're really the ones that keep the sheep in line. Like the shepherds,
they do all the work.
They really do all the work.
That's it. And so when we looked at that, we wanted to bring that conversation to you all just from a perspective of not specifically what's leading us. We could have that conversation, but in all honesty, like we do that every single time we're here. So you know, for the most part, what's leading us.
Exactly.
What we wanted to get into is speaking to other people around what's leading them as leaders. And that is where, drum roll, we bring in the magnificent, the mighty, the honorable, just the all-around dope human being that is Chief Sekou Alaje. He'll be joining us in a little bit. I'm just going to read his bio very quickly so everybody has a sense of like, who is this person? Who's this dude on the flyer that's got all this like African drip on that we may or may not have told you who he was, mostly because we wanted to see who would just join in from the perspective of like what's leading you, right? And so you're here likely because something told you to be here, or you've been following long enough to understand that there's value in this for you. And we appreciate that, as always. A quick bio. Chief Sekou Alaje is the senior priest of 256 Healing Arts in the Ogundase Ifa Temple. His approach and methodology is based on spiritual training he has undergone throughout the world, including Africa, Asia, South America, and the Caribbean. His diverse experience gives him a well-rounded and holistic approach to spiritual health. Chief Alaje comes from a long line of sages and mystics of the mystery systems called Ifa and Orisha, of Yoruba land and of Cuba. Chief Alaje is an initiated priest in several systems holding the title Babalawo, Olo Oshun, Omo Anya, both as a musician and as well as an educator. Chief Alaje has taught and mentored people of all ages and backgrounds for over 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are very, very excited to bring to you today Chief Sekou Alaje.
Greetings, everyone.
Hey.
Greetings, peace.
Aboru, aboye. What's going on, Chief?
Great. How y'all?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
Bless
Thank you
you.
so much for joining us today.
Most definitely. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, yes. So to kick things off, we wanted to start. You know, the conversation is, of course, like easy, right? And as men in leadership, there are often many things leading you, from traditional understandings, spiritual constructs, but then there's also the aspect of like once you are a leader of a community or of a group of people,
Exactly.
like they're leading you as well. You know, oftentimes in our worlds, like we look at the construct of entrepreneurship, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur because they think you get to work for yourself.
In reality, you kind of are accountable to just about everybody.
Yes, it is one of the biggest forms of service to be in entrepreneurship, and in this sense, we see it as the same way here, right? So, first question we wanted to jump into, if you got it,
Exactly, is what is leadership to you, Chief?
Yes. Leadership is something that's very, very important, as we know, because it's the needle that pulls the thread. It must be someone that has received the divine message that can then pull along those and also inspire others to lead as well. So, leadership is hearing the call, answering the call, and then preparing others to be able to hear that call and answer their own call, and sometimes to answer a collective call that we all are responding to. And one of the important words when it comes to leadership that I always think of is responsible, being able to respond. And that's the key, that whatever comes up in our community or our family or ourselves, whoever it is that we're leading, that one must be able to respond, be able to respond, responsible. Whatever the situation is, whatever is coming up, whatever presents itself. So we have to develop ourselves, train ourselves, and make ourselves well-rounded so that as leaders, so that whatever comes up, we are able to respond. Leadership may look like one thing on Monday, it may look like another thing on Tuesday, it may look like something else on Friday. Leadership presents itself in many different contexts, but the key is being able to respond. So one must be well-rounded, versed in various different avenues and different things in order to be able to respond to all of the challenges or blessings that are amongst us that we need to help lead others and lead ourselves.
wow,
Exactly. So I love that.
You gonna start there?
I do love that.
Greatly appreciate it.
Exactly. Especially the call.
Yeah,
That's the
answer the
first thing
call.
that jumped up. And the call is something that is it's like a fingerprint, right? It's different for each recipient. For you, like the call to me, it reminds me of the due north. Like when you're out and you're navigating, if you can identify your due north, it's like a multiple choice question. You know for a fact now you can find south, and it makes it easier to orient yourself. What is your due north with regard to your leadership call?
Yes, I would say for sure my due north is the Almighty Creator, by whichever name that we call that Creator. And it's through our relationship with the Creator that allows us to be able to see that north and then to follow it. And just like a relationship with a person or a relationship with anything, it requires time and effort. It requires personal vulnerability, and it requires a connection that isn't established one time, but that's established every day. So I would say that due north is the Most High, the Creator. In our culture of Ifa, we call that Creator Olodumare. And Olodumare is not a man, it's not a woman. It's a totally different divine spiritual being that leads us, the Almighty Leader. So having a relationship with Olodumare is the key. Having a relationship with yourself is the key. because it's like Olodumare can only work with what we present. So as well as we can develop ourselves and work with ourselves, that gives Olodumare even more of a figure or being or entity to utilize to carry out whatever that mission is.
Thank you for that, Chief. So in looking at that level of depth, right, with what's leading you, it makes me think back to childhood, right? And so at what point in your childhood did you start to understand, or can you look back at your childhood and think of like the first time you remember seeing someone that you considered a leader? Who was that person, and why were they a leader for you?
Yes. I would say the first experience and example of leadership that I had growing up was my mother. She was an amazing leader. She's still alive, but she's in her more retired aspect. That's why I say was. And she had a very important role in the family and in the community. And she stood up to that role every time. And one of her things was bringing people together and creating a space for people to dialogue. And it's very interesting with our current situation with being quarantined because it really brings to light how important coming together is and how at this stage how illegal it is. And so it allows me to really reflect and say it's always been illegal for Black people to come together. And that was one of the things that she did the best at, bringing people together and then creating an environment for people to be comfortable and for people to then be able to connect, build relationships, share ideas. And she did this effortlessly. Or let me say, it appeared effortlessly to the outside, but being her son and growing up with her, it came from long hours, long days, early mornings, and tireless effort day in, day out. So as a child, I would say it's my mother. But once I branched out into the community, then there was a community leader that I experienced not as a child, but definitely as a young adult. And his name was Malonga Cascalor. He's passed away now, so send love to him. And he was someone that was from the Congo, from Central Africa. And he came to the Bay Area. I'm from Oakland, California. And he came to the Bay Area and was based in Oakland. And he was an amazing leader and led for over 40 years and left a legacy. And one of the things that really was impressive about him was coming to another country and leading people in another country. You know, he spoke English, but it wasn't his first language. But the spirit that he led with was something that all people could identify. And he did it through African culture, teaching African culture through music and dance. He had a dance company, and he really brought people together and taught people what it meant to be African as a concept. It's a continent, but there are certain things that people share within that continent. And he really brought out the African spirit that was within all of us and explained and showed us what it was like to be African. Although it wasn't about the clothes, it wasn't about the hat, it wasn't about anything like that, but more so the good character, caring for one another, showing love, inspiring, being there to support each other, holding each other down, supporting each other through thick and thin, and really, embodying many of the principles that our ancestors here in the United States already had until going through the terrible aspects of slavery that has fragmented our communities.
I'm so happy you said that in that way for a variety of reasons. I will sum it up by that reminds me of a KRS-One quote. And he said, "What's at the center of being Black, which is being African. What's at the center of being African, which is being human." And so what you explained were fundamental ties that bind, so to speak, with regard to the human connection. And you realize that the center of being African is oneness, because I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that African automatically means black until people remember that if you're human, that is where home is.
That's right.
So let's get back to that fundamental human detail, right? With regard to that leadership that you received, what is one principle that has been difficult to accept based on how you were raised?
You know, I give thanks again for my mother. She raised me in a way that nothing about leadership or being human or being African has been difficult. And so I've been blessed to, I haven't had any challenges with that. You know, she created an environment and instilled principles in me that are part of my early psyche. So that allows many things that I've embraced going forward in life to be easy and without challenge. So for me, I've been blessed to have a mother that instilled certain principles in me that I haven't had any challenges.
That is a truly beautiful, beautiful thing. But I know, of course, that you have a lot of students and people that come to you for mentorship that deal with the polarities between East and West,
That's
right? And trying to, over time, constantly emancipate themselves from the mental slaveries that have been placed upon us.
That's right.
But then there's the conversation of once you've done that work, and now you're in the seat to like fully see East and West for what they fully are, is then a choice, right? And that's where a lot of times, at least I know for myself personally, that's where I heavily value leadership, because there is no one or right or wrong answer when you're in the seat of choosing from a very open perspective, and you have that good character, like that good human decency. And so for you, in terms of how you have to embrace some simple things like digital, right? Going on video, with respect to the tradition and the things that you hold sacred. How in your leadership, how have you dealt with that polarity of what things to share and allow to be more public because there is still the public good that needs to be provided, and what things to keep sacred because it's a secret and everybody's not supposed to know everything?
Yes. I would say that it's very important to learn something before you teach it. And in the context of leadership, you have to know yourself before you can lead others to themselves. And so, based on the example that you used as far as what to share and things like that, it only comes from a deep understanding of where the line is so that we don't cross it. Also, having people that you respect their opinion, that help to assist you, that can tell you and give you feedback to say, maybe that shouldn't be said, or maybe this should be said, or and Ifa has a proverb that says, no one person knows how many grains of sand exist in the world. And the smartest person in the world has never learned how to tie water into a knot. So it really requires your counsel. We have to build a council, people that we honor and respect their opinion, that can help to give us the feedback that can allow us to kind of catch up to any mistakes that are made and things like that. So I would say, one fold is to have a command of the material so that you don't share things, that are secret. And then also having a council of people that will tell you, hey, you got something is in your beard, or, got some lint. Let me get that off you. People that share.
That's real love.
Mission,
right?
Are willing to give you that feedback to say, don't say that. That's going to be a little too much to share, or say more of this. The people really need to hear that.
Good deal.
See, all of that all sounds like love to me. And so with that piece, like my immediate pivot is, it sounds like your understanding, Chief, of love as a verb is pretty robust. What does love look like, feel like, sound like to you?
Yes. On my website, 256 Healing Arts, I have a .com. I have a lecture about love that is something that I talk about with my students a lot because I believe now, again, this is my opinion, but that love is something that really has really displaced and fragmented the Black community. And it's interesting because the concept of love is something that's actually a fairly new concept that was brought to the world through European Western culture and really got people to believe in something that basically is unattainable. And it's ironic because they implemented this concept through the arts. And to this day, through the arts, the concept of love is what's promoted the most. Through our songs, through the movies, people falling in love, romantic comedies, uh, singers, singing about how they have this love or they lost this love. But actually, love is the thing that is really tearing us apart. And just as you quoted KRS One, he says it so eloquently in his song "Love's Gonna Get You." Say, "I love that car," or "I love that jacket," but it's the things that we place our energy and concept of love into that's gonna get you in the end. So it's important, and of course, the word love means different things to different people. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand how you're saying it, and even the way you're articulating it. But I just wanted to first start by saying when we talk about love, it's so important to qualify what that term means because it means different things to different people, and because the general concept that's been promoted to people has been, I believe, the thing that's been messing us up. Because love is something that's unsustainable. Love is something that is a feeling that you catch, but it's not something that will stay. So there has to be other things that are in place in order to keep the love going. But when something can be built on a foundation that's not love, then you don't have to keep that going. You can engage in what the foundation is. And when you look at communities and societies before this concept of love was introduced to the world, then you'll see things that had a longer longevity, relationships, communities that had a longer longevity because they were based on other types of principles, but they weren't based in something that is a feeling that you catch. And like KRS once said, love's gonna get you. That when you put your energy and your value onto that love, something that can a feeling that can come and go, then your foundation is something that can also come and go as well. So I'm not projecting and saying that this is your definition of love at all, my brother. I'm
Mhm.
just sharing that it's so important that the word love is something that we really per conversation really qualify because it's something that's really tearing us apart. Our relationships, when we used to see our grandparents, Big Mama and Papa, they together 50, 60 years, it's not because of love. It's about some other deep principles. People together 90, 100 years. The love was in the beginning, perhaps, but the reason why they're still together 100 years later is because of other things that they have put their spirit and energy into, and that are sustainable.
Mm.
So to go with what you were saying, yes, the people supporting what's happening, like we use an example of what to share and having a council. I would say that those are people that have the same principles and have the desire to have the same outcome and are vested and invested in seeing that outcome come about. And because they are vested and invested, they are committed to coming together and to helping that mission to come to manifest. And that they may love it one day and they may not love it the next day, but they'll still
Exactly.
show up because they're committed to the mission. And it's something that I like to say, they have submitted to the mission. Submission to the mission is the key.
Mm. All right.
Submission to the mission is the key.
Submission to
You
the
got to say
mission
that
is
and
the
let it breathe
key.
for
That
us.
has breathed. But not Chief, you bring up a lot of points that um, underscore a lot of the things that JD and I talk about often on this web series. One of those things being knowing what is leading you,
Mm-hmm.
or knowing what it is that you put before yourself, right? And so when you look at the average community as we exist as Black people, there's a really interesting conversation there in regards to when you ask a person, especially a man, what do you put before yourself?
Mm-hmm.
The answers are going to be things like God, my family, my wife,
My football
etc.,
team.
etc. Well, this shouldn't be the football team. I pray it ain't the football team.
Let's keep it
But
real.
that creates an interesting polarity back to the conversation of like East versus West, and how it's not that one is better than the other, but it is simply a choice in terms of what you choose to lead with, because it then determines what you're going to put before yourself.
That's right.
But we swung that pendulum in the last conversation we had when we were talking about what's love got to do with it, with regards to relationships, marriage, and partnership.
That's right.
And we both got to that point where we understand that like love is not required for partnership. It
Not
does
if it's
have,
not a priority for you.
if it's not a priority for you,
Yeah.
right? But what happens is people may mask their priorities based on what's available to their sight and their vision.
Exactly.
So I may see nothing but potential partners who are all wrapped up in this construct of romantic love. And so therefore I adjust my principle and my scope
to make room for theirs.
to make room for theirs, also to make me feel in a way less shamed by my beliefs.
Because it's like such a stark contrast.
It's a stark contrast.
Okay.
So for you, Chief, because in relationships, especially romantic relationships, there's more than just the mission, right? How does that show up how does that show up for you? Now, we may say with regards to romance, but there may be a better word to use in that space. But for you, how does that show up in your partnership?
Yes, I think that I think the mission is the center of a partnership, and that it being the thing that allows you to be able to put all of yourself into it. Because if your partner who is supporting you, working with you, sees that you are dedicated to what you said you're going to be dedicated to, then that can allow them to want to give you the love or the thing that you require, that you are looking for from that person, and then vice versa. If you have a partner and that partner is engaged in doing the thing that they said they believe in, that they have been born to carry out, then that will create like an admiration and an inspiration that will allow you to say, I love that person. I want to give them my all. I want to share this and that with them. And I want to be there for them to make sure that they are able to follow through with what it is that they say that they were destined and born to do. So I'm seeing them carrying it out, and that's inspiring me and creating a feeling of admiration. And then that then inspires me to continue to invest my spirit and energy into what they're doing. And for me, this is all, I'm not saying this is what it is for everybody. I'm not saying this is how it should be for everybody, but just per the question for me. And I think that in my experience in relationships, that when it's not based in a mission and it's just based in, I got a feeling for you and she has a feeling for me, that feeling can go away. It requires the skill of the individuals to keep the feeling, but but keeping that feeling may not be everyone's forte. And so, because that's a skill in itself, so then a potentially good relationship could fall apart only because the people don't have the skills to maintain the feeling, you know. So for me, it's the mission. If I meet somebody and I think they're cool, the first thing I'm going to lead with is, this is my mission. And then my next question is, what's your mission? If they tell me this is their mission, and then I observe their life, and they're not following through with that, then I can lend some support and say, if there's anything I can do to assist you in that mission, let me know, because I would really love to see that carry out. If I lend that support and then they still don't follow through with their mission, then I'll be no longer interested. No matter how attractive, no matter how supportive even they are to me or whatever, because that for me and in my experience is what's paramount. Because Ifa culture, which is the spiritual practice that I practice, we are born to fulfill our destiny. We all have a destiny. We all have many things that we were put on earth to do. So when someone is doing those things and striving for those things, then that's when they are going to experience all of the positive and good things in life, aka on the right path. But when someone is not following their destiny, then that's when you hear the phrase, this person is going down the wrong path. And on that path and journey is are many negative situations, to say the least. So for me to really be into somebody, they have to be striving to be in alignment with their destiny. Now, that's easier said than done. And through the power of Ifa, Ifa is the tool that we use to keep us on our path and keep us in alignment with our destiny. So it's definitely difficult without it, but with Ifa, it makes it, much more possible. But for me, if someone is not on their path or on the right path, then I will lose interest.
That sounds like a lot of accountability. I think Shanika was the one who dropped it, that each would and should have responsibility for yourself. I know caps happen. Don't even trip. But
this is a place where it's cool to cap. You can cap here in this way.
In this context. In this context. But yeah, so responsibility for yourself. There's no responsibility that you should leave to any entity outside of yourself.
That's right.
Within the context of Ifa, because that is your due north.
Right.
Correct?
It's not my north. It's my
all directions.
Let's say if that's my car, that I take to the north.
Understood. Give thanks.
The north is the Almighty Creator, Olodumare.
It is indeed. So, how do you keep yourself and those on your council accountable?
Yes. So, very good question. So, first and foremost, within Ifa culture, we talk about the power of the word. That when you say something, that let's say in this context of what we're saying, when you proclaim that this is what I would do, those words go out into the universe, and they're actually sound waves that are creating vibrations within the universe. When you say those things to the Most High, or when you say those things out loud to the universe, and that in that moment it catches the ear of the Most High is going to hold you accountable for what it is that you said. You'll notice many times people won't want to say what it is that they will do or want to do. They'll say, oh, I don't want to say. But when we are at a stage of our evolution where we're ready, and when we say it, then it's the Most High that holds us accountable. No human. It's the Most High. The Most High holds you accountable. Now, as we develop ourselves, it's about us being able to, and this is what we started with, having a relationship with the Most High, so that the Most High can holler at you and say, yo, you're not keeping up with what it is that you said that you were going to do. You are not following through. So I'm holding you accountable. And that can look like various things. Various people need different things to be held accountable. Some person may just need a nice mention from the Creator, keep it together. Someone might need a big sign that shows them, oh my gosh, ever since this moment, I've been keeping it together. So we all need different things, but that accountability, again, it's not on a human level. It's not on a council level. It's with the Almighty Creator, Olodumare.
Thank you for that, Chief. We appreciate that. You said something that sparked my mind for a second. Well, two things, actually. One, The first about when we speak things and they go into the universe. It made me think of this concept of soul contracts, spirit contracts, which of course in our community, there's always that concept of like your word being your bond.
That's right.
Right. So don't say anything that you're not willing to
That's right.
live by or die by. And
That's the kind of cap we don't allow.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
But for me, that's always been a challenging construct because I would always have trepidation about my word being bond because I know that I'm flawed as a human being. But when the word coming from something higher than myself, there's less to worry about with saying like, this is what I'm going to do or this is what I'm not going to do.
That's right.
And as you talked about, specifically in E5, how that can be a supreme check and balance, not just for you, but for your partner, for your friends and family, for your children even. For you now at the position of chief, I can imagine that there are nuances to accountability that are different than 20 years ago, right? What's one of the major parts of your leadership now that is more challenging than it was when you initially started out in the tradition?
Yes. It's very interesting because the role of chief, which is a role, is something that you have to embody before being called that. That's what then inspires people to call you that. And so the opportunity to be a chief comes from a community of people saying, we want to describe what you're doing, and this is how we will describe it. So therefore, because of that, there isn't necessarily a shift when someone steps into that role because they should have already been doing that. So the term chief is something that's given to someone that is already acting in that way. So there hasn't been a shift as far as from when things started to now in the context of leadership. Now, when I started, I was developing, learning myself, like we talked about before, leading others. But as far as then, okay, once the call comes to lead, then you begin following that call. The principles that you use, that you are enacting with, those principles that you hold steadfast from day one are going to be the same principles that a community will come together and say, from this point forward, we want to refer to you as chief. So it's the principles that are from day one. So ironically, I know it would appear like there would be a shift and things like that, but it actually isn't like that. Once you make the commitment to, okay, you know what? I'm going to, just as you say, lead. I am going to lead. Then you have to learn what are those principles in leadership. Once you know what those principles are and you accept them and say, I go forward and I'm going to follow these principles, then for the rest of your life, you are in lack of a better term, a chief from that point forward. And it's only a group of people that will say, you know what, this person is a chief. And the way it is back home in our motherland of Africa, one may be a chief from many different communities. So one community may say, you know what, we want to make you a chief. They're talking about their community. Then another community say, you know what, we want to make you a chief too. They're talking about their community. Then these are all communities that you have had some type of influence on and a connection with. So someone that is a chief, they may actually have received that blessing of being referred to that by several different communities. And you know how it is, we may even serve different roles in different communities, but because we're following the principles of leadership, then in fact, we are able to be that same person, but in different contexts, in different networks. So it's really interesting, but it happens from day one and it doesn't change or shift. It evolves, but it evolves because you evolve. but the principles don't evolve. It's just
Mhm.
how you carry those things out.
Yeah. So to kind of close the KRS-One loop, because
Okay.
y'all both have mentioned the brother, and I'm gonna close it. Well,
Go
The
that's
for
chief,
it.
he's the chief.
the
Chief,
chief.
Chief.
Yes.
But KRS-One was doing an interview where he was being asked, who does he think the next leaders are in the
Mhm.
hip hop community and in our community? And he had to preface it by saying, first and foremost, if we're not talking about leadership based on principles, then we're not talking about the same thing. And he mentioned in traditional societies, the leader wasn't necessarily this person based on their lineage, who their daddy was, or what they did.
Mhm.
It was the person who embodied the principles of that community the most, who was seen as the leader.
That's right.
And the only reason they continue to hold that title is because they continue to embody those principles day in and day out.
Mhm.
Which closes there, right? But I wanted to share that piece because in my mind, when I heard it, it was the first time I had heard leadership broken down to a perspective of it really don't have nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with your level of embodiment of these things that you care about.
That's right.
And Shanika brought up a really good, interesting question I wanted to Chief throw to you. Is a teacher necessary for discipline? Can someone achieve a level of discipline in their leadership without having a teacher?
I would say, no, it's not necessary. It's essential.
Ooh.
It's essential. It's essential.
Like
Because it's like, how do you know how to bake a cake if you've never seen someone bake a cake? How do you know how to speak if you never heard someone talk? How do you know how to do anything without an example? So anything that people can see from me is I'm the student of my teachers and the continued student of my teachers. Being a father, you are teaching your children. Being a member of society, you're teaching your neighbor. You're teaching the people as soon as you come out your house and you go to the train or the bus. You're on the bus. You're in the role of teaching by being. So the key to just what you said, discipline, so everything is having a teacher. Whatever it is someone wants to do, they have to find a teacher to teach them how to do it.
Mm.
To figure it out through trial and error is possible. However, it's a long road. It's a long walk. For a child to come out the womb and no one ever talked to them their whole life, they never hear words, but then are expected to speak paragraphs and write stories. It's very difficult. If they hear birds chirping, they may speak like a bird. So it's through the example that one is able to achieve. Your network, your net worth. So your teachers are the ones that are going to empower you through their presence. They may not hold your hand and teach you. They may not write it on a piece of paper and teach you. But by them allowing you to be in their presence, then they are empowering you to be that way, to walk that way, to speak that way. And that is essential. And you use the word discipline, and because discipline is one of the cornerstones to leadership and success. So discipline is that's the key to discipline, is having a teacher to teach you discipline. But again, teaching isn't necessarily taking a spoon and putting all the lessons on it and putting it to your mouth, but actually empowering someone through allowing them to be in the presence of the teacher. So it's essential. And I and in various aspects of my life, I wanted to learn something. I sought out a teacher to teach it to.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that type of pedagogy, then and then you talk about accountability and how, just knowing, well, who's holding my teacher accountable. Those types of things, you start to see, oh, it's the Most High holding that teacher accountable. That's where you start to see those dynamics. So that's what I would say. It's essential to have a teacher. If you don't have a teacher in something you want to do, then it's going to be very difficult to accomplish. Swimming, driving, anything you could think of, someone has to show you. Because even if you even can figure a portion of it out, everything has a secret
Yeah.
to doing it on another level.
Yep.
So if no one's sharing with you those secrets, then it's going to be very difficult.
Shay. All right.
Yeah.
It's gonna be very difficult.
I can speak to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And then now it goes to the matter of cans versus whys, right? Like one can do quite a bit under their own volition. However, you're going to reach a certain point at which, like, you get to the end of your own capacity and you need the other, if we're going to assume that others exist, right?
That's right.
For the sake of this conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and to continue what you're saying, and that what you just said is very important, because every teacher can only lead you so far.
Yep.
And so in having teachers, and it's important to know when you have gone as far as you can with that teacher, and when it's time to move on, that there is no disrespect or belittlement of that teacher to say, oh, well, I'm trying to get here, and you can't leave me there because you're not really as dope as I thought, because I've grown to this level. But it's not like that. And I explain to my students, you have preschool, you have elementary school, you have high school, you have college. Your college teacher may give you something that's profound, but that doesn't mean the ABCs that your elementary school teacher, that doesn't mean that they were more profound than that elementary school teacher. So there's various stages of our evolution, and we have to have the teachers that reflect those stages. And we also can't disrespect our earlier teachers, because they could only take us to a certain distance in our journey, and we can't expect our teachers to take us the whole journey, the whole road. Each teacher that we have, we sought them out, whether it was conscious or unconscious. They serve us, we serve them. Then it comes to a point, just as you said, my brother, where now I've reached as far as I can go with this teacher, and then it's time to move on. And I think that's a healthy thing, and I think that that's something that is very important in our understanding, that you may have a teacher that's not going to take you the full distance, and that's very natural, and that's how our education system is, and that's how life is.
You bring up a really, really interesting point there, Chief, especially for those of us that have grown up in predominantly Eurocentric environments and have utilized faith or religious constructs that were given to us as opposed to ones that we created. In that space of teaching, right, there's a very big difference I've noticed in how these schools of understanding are set up, right?
Okay.
And so growing up, my grandfather's a bishop in the Pentecostal Christian tradition,
sanctified
all the way to the top, right?
Okay.
But I don't necessarily know if I've ever seen any of my grandfather's mentors. Like I've never seen who he went to for things. I don't remember them being around. Now I know that my great grandfather was a minister. My uncles, great uncles, like they come from that lineage in terms of that immediate family.
Okay.
But for the most part, that's where it stopped from what I saw.
Okay.
And so, Chief, for you, because you said like your journey has been not necessarily smoother, but it's been more consistent in terms of your trajectory of growth. In your dealings with learning, and sometimes how that can be fluid and sometimes it can be tumultuous when a teacher's teaching you in a way that you may not be fully getting, like whatever it may be, there's an inconsistency. Could you tell us about a time where you had to accept a teaching that you didn't necessarily agree with, and like what happened on the back end, right? Did you end up agreeing with it? Do you still not bang with that thing? Or how did it end up for you?
Yes. I would say that, it has not been an easy journey or a consistent journey. And but it's been a long journey. I've been engaged in doing this for a long time. And something that I learned early on was, separating the man from the mission kind of thing. And so uh, I've I've seen people being people and behaviors that may not be what I may think is um, what I would want to emulate. But however, if their mission and the mission of what they're teaching me is correct, then I can separate that and say, well, I may not want to emulate this behavior, but I do want to follow the words that they're saying or what they believe in. And I've had consistency as far as that. So I've had teachers that have stuck to their mission. They didn't switch it up and say something was this when it was that. And so I've had basically a good opportunity to experience teachers that were true to what they did. They were the truth to what they did. And so, that's kind of how they represent it. Again, separating the man from the mission, as a phrase. Not all my teachers were men, but just as a phrase, so not always agreeing with people's behavior, but everyone is a human having a journey of evolution. And so often we put too much weight on our teachers to be perfect or to be infallible and this and that. So with that, I would say that all of my teachers have been consistent with their mission. If they said this is what they believed in, then I followed that. And so I haven't had any teachers tell me something and then actually do something else. Or, you know what I'm saying, in a human way, but not in a mission way. If they say this is the mission, like you said, this is the due north, we're not going west. We're going north. And I can look and have checks and balances and say, well, we still going north. We might be doing it this way, but we're not going west. We still going north. So it's been a blessing. And that's the thing is, when you commit with all of yourself and you submit with all of yourself, then those teachers will be provided for you, the real ones. Now, like you mentioned, your family that was into the church, but I imagine that, even with those teachings, separating who they were as people versus the mission of what they were trying to communicate, not religiously, but what they're trying to communicate as far as representing something to the community, that there's so many lessons within that you can take that again as far as you can, and then at that point you say, okay, big uncle, I'm gonna have to move in this direction.
Yeah. Without the add-on, I think is where a lot of us get caught up on. There's a phrase that we toss around a lot in a circle, and it's people going people. And so to a certain extent, I think the separation of the individual from the mantle is really where a lot of us, myself included, often get it tangled and twisted because it's very difficult. Like selfishly, you want someone to be that role. Then you remember all of these are archetypes.
That's right.
Like, nothing we are doing has not been done before. We are simply the ones that are performing the task at this current moment. And we can be removed or replaced at any time. Like none of us are irreplaceable. And that's very difficult for ego to understand.
Yeah, right.
I think that altruism and the due north, without making it self-deprecation, we are great, we are mighty, we are special. And also, all of us are special. So long as you keep making the decision and showing up and choosing this mantle every day, then it'll continue to choose you back. The second we change our mind and choose something else, it's not good, it's not bad. However, don't be surprised if what you see around you starts to change.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, no, this dancing step is beautiful. And I think he who or she who can dance will always find the rhythm. And those who cannot keep the rhythm will always find a way to blame the drummer. So,
that part right there, man. Especially, yeah, man. It's funny. like thinking about the concept of rhythm, right, with regards to life.
And well, back to vibration.
It's back to vibration. It's right back to the vibration of things. So as we come to almost the end of our time, first and foremost, Chief, we wanted to thank you for coming on, giving us your time, of your wisdom, of your resources, to be here with us today. And wanted to just give the floor to you for a moment with anything that's going on within 256 Healing Arts for you personally over the next couple of weeks or months that you would like to shout out or put out into the universe for people to be aware of.
Oh, thank you. I'd just like to take a second to say a prayer for us that I wish all of us great success on our path in life. I pray for us to be able to, just as we talked about today, really submit to our destiny and submit to the mission that we have. And I pray that we all are able to walk on that path successfully, that we're able to submit and to push away any obstacles and distractions from our destiny and from our path, from destiny and anything blocking our path, so that we can actually be who we're destined to be and to embody all that we're destined to embody. I pray for all of our health as we're dealing with these terrible times of this, systematic warfare that's being unleashed upon us. I pray for all of us to remain sane and to keep peace of mind as the goal for our day-to-day life, so that as we gain our success, that we're always able to maintain peace of mind. I pray for all of our families. I pray for our children and those that are seeking children to be able to receive those children that will assist them on their journey and that they will lead and direct upon their journey as well. I pray for all of our parents, living and unliving, that their spirit is fortified, that they're able to continue to fortify us through the spirit world or fortify us through this physical plane. And I pray for you, brothers, to have continued success in what you're doing in the community. I pray for all that you are putting out there to be received in a positive way. And I pray for you all to continue to move on your path forwards ever and backwards never.
Ashe.
All right. Well, we are here.
We are.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
chickens, dogs, cats, and horses.
Everybody in between. We thank you all as always for joining us for another episode of Divine Masculine Activated. If there are any questions that are coming in, we got a couple minutes left that we would love to, bring you all into this conversation. See if there's anything you want Chief to speak on before we jump out. So we're gonna jump into the chats and see anybody with a question
that wasn't addressed. Let me see.
Yeah.
How do I scroll up?
I'll put it this way.
That was a good statement, though.
This way. There it is.
As love is an action.
Shout out to these.
Exactly.
I don't know if we had any questions come in. We're just checking to make sure.
No. I definitely want to hear from the people questions for sure.
I think we good. Great wisdom. This tends to happen often. Like we get to rolling. Of course. We got
of course.
There we go. Come on.
Swing in with it. Swing low, sweet chariot.
Oh man. Can one entwine Christianity with the Yoruba practice?
Yes, I think that historically people have intertwined Christianity with Yoruba principles. And it definitely happened with Catholicism in Cuba and Brazil, intertwining those concepts and imagery with Yoruba principles. And I think that we all are on various stages of our evolution. So if we're in the stage of our evolution that we are still connected to Christianity, connected to Jesus and Christ and all that he believes in and represents, and that we still like the principles of Yoruba culture and Ifa, that sure, I think there's no reason why one can't embody and walk with both of them. Sometimes there will be moments where the messages will be different. And in those moments, we just have to take stock and evaluation of which principles resonate with us and resonate also, like when you apply it to life. And does this principle actually make for success and blessings in my life? And if there are any discrepancies in those principles, then in those moments, you just make the choice about which one you choose to follow.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I know that that can be a powerfully challenging journey as someone who has gone through it myself.
As a recovering
Pentecostal, so to speak. But no, and it's really not even in the principles, right? Like the principles of Jesus Christ. When you look at the fruitages of the Spirit and these things that Jesus said or Jesus practiced.
Oh, no, it's the dogma attached to it.
Dogma attached to it. Once man gets involved from a perspective of that man or that individual's purpose or mission and takes it and moves it towards that.
And makes that an absolute as opposed to a relative, which is really what this realm is for anyway.
That's it. All about the relativity of things and what we're going to do with it.
That's right.
So yeah, we'll give one more second if anybody else has a question and they want to jump in before we close.
Exactly.
Let's see if we get anybody here. But just to let everybody know, we got one more episode in this season for the Divine Masculine Activated. It's coming up on a special day. So we normally do this bi-weekly every Sunday. But we've got a really special guest for our last episode. And so that conversation is going to be on October 13th. It's going to be a Tuesday to remember. You'll see more information come out from us, on that regard. As I see, no more questions have come in as of now. Again, Chief Sekou, thank you. If you want to drop any information in regards to where folks can find you, if they want to reach out directly or if they want more resources from you, you mentioned the website, but where can they find you?
Yes, so we have a website called 256healingarts.com, and that's our website. That's the hub for many of the various things we do. I'm on Instagram at Alaje256, and I'm on Facebook, Baba Seku Alaje. And feel free to reach out for any other questions, any other ideas, any other resources. We also bring resources of materials that we use for various spiritual practices and African cultural representation, like, clothes and other, things that are necessary, but as well as spiritual items like soaps and powerful things that we use, incense, all those types of things as well. And, I just want to say knowledge is power. So it's so important to just keep seeking for knowledge and wisdom. And when we're on that journey, then we will come across all types of wonderful, beautiful, wonderful things. So I just encourage everyone to stay on the path, seek for the wisdom, for knowledge. On our website, we have also workshops and lectures that I've given that are also opportunities for more knowledge and wisdom. But just stay on the path, because this whole universe, from this Western perspective, is about distracting us from our path and distracting us from wisdom and knowledge and trying to keep us in a state of, ignorance. So just stay on the path of wisdom and knowledge, and you will achieve and experience everything that's blessed and destined for your life.
And with that being said,
thank y'all for coming.
Exactly.
Peace and love.
Thank you all for being. Continue to be. Choose to be every day.
Oh, man. Thank y'all. Peace out, y'all.